All right, welcome everyone. We will get started shortly. We had huge turnout of people that were going to try to join us tonight. My name is Amy Hawkins. I'm here with Eileen McNeil and Citizens for Traditional Values. It is 7 p.m., so I will continue to let people in and we will get started. It is an honor to have you all. We are so excited about what God is doing in the state. We believe that this issue, this education issue, is the hot topic of the moment, and as it should be, with involving our children and all over Michigan. Many of you are new to our organization, and so I'll give a quick rundown. But the reason that this all started is, as you're all aware, that the State Board of Education kind of rocked the boat back last fall with some new policy that our friends Katie Broussard and Genevieve had all gotten wind on. So we started to kind of light the fire, and we saw a groundswell of you that spoke up and said, hey, this is not okay. We want to protect our children. And so with that, Eileen McNeil, who's here with us, the president of Citizens for Traditional Values, she graciously, saw what was happening in this moment and said, listen, this is a big deal. This education issue is a big deal. We need to make sure that we are serving the population of Michigan well, to make sure you all are equipped with the knowledge that we have at the state level. And so the purpose of these calls is threefold. One is to move people basically from just being sideline cheerleaders and observers to participants in the process. So our purpose with these monthly calls, this is now our second one, is to serve parents, policy leaders, and the pulpit. So if our next one is already scheduled for March 10th, as if you find this helpful tonight, we're hopeful that you will share this with others. It's an hour jam-packed of information that we can encourage you, inspire you, equip you with truth that we have from like our coalitions with different leaders. And then our goal is that you will take that and turn around and use it in your local community. Citizens for Traditional Values has been around since 1989, working in the state to be a positive voice for your values, for the right to life, for limited government, for educational choice, for parental rights, religious freedoms. And the good news is that CTV is not just gone one day, here today and gone tomorrow. We've been here and we are still plugging along. And so we hope you leave this call tonight encouraged and motivated. Not only is God moving in our state, but as he brings more truth forward, we have a responsibility to work to inform others. So with that, let me give this to Eileen, our fearless president, and she will guide the conversation as we move forward. Any questions you guys have, please drop them in the chat. We welcome you tonight to our February briefing on education. Eileen?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you here. Part of CTV's mission in those kind of four main areas of educational choice, life, good governance, and really preserving our Judeo-Christian values and family. And we advocate in Lansing, and we advocate at the grassroots. And I just quickly, before we go into our main topic, there is some good news in Lansing this week, and actually on the national level, that pertains to our topic. And that one, there's a school choice bill that is making its way through the legislature, House Bill 5310. And it really is going to bring a whole lot of more school choice opportunities. It's really opening enrollment. So if parents will have more opportunities to move their children if they want to, it's still going to retain local school district control. So they're not going to have to fill, classrooms with 40 kids if that's not what they do, which is good. That's a necessary. We want to always preserve local control. It's good to have that in our state. But this will give more transparency to parents. They'll be able to figure out, the schools will be required to be more transparent about what is available, what is not, when they notify. But also it just opens up a whole lot of opportunities for parents. Now it's in the House Education and Workforce Committee. There's a hearing next Wednesday. If you're interested in following that, you can go online and you can actually watch it on TV or come. I just want to quickly tell you that. And of course, the great news regarding there was a detransitioner lawsuit that happened that was like earth-shattering, earthquake around the the transsexual agenda because she won her settlement, $2 million settlement. That 2 days later, the American Medical Association reversed course on their guidance, saying that no, maybe we shouldn't be operating on children and changing their sex in their bodies. We don't have enough evidence to support that that is merited. So, and also the Association of Plastic Surgeons, same thing. So, those are seismic shifts in what our culture has been going through in the last well, it's really the last 10 years, but we seem to have heard it and seen it, especially in the last few years. So that's quickly good news. And then I think Amy teed it up nicely. We'll be talking about the monster in the classroom right now. I guess we gotta say it. What do we need to know about MOASH? You know, how do we investigate? What questions should we be asking? And I've asked Pastor Tim Cross to be on with us tonight because CTV is all about engaging with our faith community. And how do we engage with our faith community? Because I'm pretty sure almost everyone on this call tonight probably goes to church. And we want to help you also know how to engage with your pastors or clergy. And in this cultural moment, and these are moral issues. This isn't politics. This is moral issues that our children are being affected by. Everything that we are talking about really does affect our families and children. So I asked Pastor Tim Cross, who has been with us on several conferences. He is a go-getter. He is the pastor of the Word of
Living
Life.
living word. Living word.
Living Word. I'm sorry, Pastor. Living Word in Muskegon, Michigan. He's also, I believe, the chair of the Muskegon County Republican Party. He's
Yes, I am.
also on the Whitehall School District School Board. And he also has something to tell us about the SEAB. So, Tim, thank you for joining us tonight and sharing kind of some of your reflections and guiding us.
Okay. Well, maybe to start off, I've just like probably many of those on this call, I've always been somewhat politically involved or keep track of what's going on, and maybe at times being a little bit outraged with some of the things that have taken place. But in our particular district, a few years ago, they almost turned over during Pride Week. They almost turned over the high school. They really did, to the Gay Straight Alliance, and what I don't have time to get into all that they did, but it was bad, a very, very bad situation. And it was almost, you as a Christian and as even a conservative student going in, they were oppressed. They almost didn't even want to open their mouth. Well, with that, a number of parents got very upset, very disgusted by it, and where maybe one person would be at a school board meeting, all of a sudden 100 showed up, and rightfully so, very angry, and let their opinions be made known. And in the process, I was dealing with all of those folks that were very upset. And when we saw that really the school board would not respond at all, they really didn't put us on the agenda or even didn't address our concerns. And we recognized that was going to go nowhere. At that time, every 2 years, I believe this way with most school boards, a portion of the school board comes up for election. And that next year, there were 3 spots out of 7 that came up that we could run. And I looked at these parents and I said, somebody needs to run. 3 of you need to make a decision to run. It's great to be
Right.
upset, but if you're not willing to get in the game, you've really done nothing. 3 of you need to run. And then so when it came time, finally, it was about time to file. I looked at all these parents and said, all right, who's going to run? Nobody.
Hmm.
Nobody, except for one man that said, you know what? I'll run if you run with me. And because I have been very vocal as a pastor about political, or really, I believe, social and biblical issues, I thought, I'm the wrong guy to run. But if I run and it gets the other guy to run, I was hoping he'd win. Well, long story short, he lost and I won. And I bumped off a very liberal pastor who was a school board president. I bumped him off and I beat him. And I walked into a situation that I was definitely the pariah. I was the outlier. And it was 7 people on the board. 5 were liberal, 2 conservative. And so you walk into that setting and there were already, there was tension in the air. But it was interesting when I got there, one of the first things when I got there was I asked about the sex ed board. And I said, who's the clergy? Who's the pastor on the sex ed board? And they let me know. I called that pastor and he said, I'm just too busy. I can't do it. And I said, would you step down? And he said, yes, he would. And I found a very conservative minister in the area. And I went to, even in a negative environment, went into the superintendent and put that person in as the clergy on the sex ed board. And guess what? She got put in. We were able to get that in. And so that ended up maybe fast forwarding a little bit with what happened with the state school board, with the stuff that they passed. Let me say this. It was interesting. I got there, butted heads with the superintendent. We had a number of issues and went eyeball to eyeball and toe to toe kind of things over a few things. But he decided to step down and take another job. Now, just for full disclosure, he lasted 2 weeks at the next job and got fired.
Wow.
But the new guy coming in, we had 3 millages fail, which had never happened in our district. And the new guy coming in, it allowed me to say to them, 40% of people are going to vote for what you want. 40% are going to vote against what you want. It's the 20% you've got to look at, and you've ticked that 20% off by what you did previously. You're going to have to work with them. So fast forward, when some of this stuff came down that the state school board passed, I went to the superintendent and said, you're going to have to deal with this. If you don't deal with this, what's going to happen? You're going to have another blow up in this community. And so he immediately, I said to him, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to respond to this if you want to reach that 20%. And the interesting thing was, he did exactly what I told him to do. Wow. He went right down, it's almost like he repeated everything I said. And that's over about a 3 or 4 year period of time. He basically, because of our sex ed board, he determined it doesn't matter what the state says, everything's going to come through our sex ed board, and they're going to determine the morality and what the level of morals are in our community and not the state. Now there's a whole lot in between there. But
right.
But I'll say this, none of that could have happened unless I was in the game. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but many of you, I believe, are Christians. A lot of times God just needs somebody to step in there and be in that place. And just like with the previous superintendent, who was definitely anti-church, he was anti a lot of, just his framework was against a lot of our morals. He just decided to take a job that he couldn't last more than 2 weeks at. And we got a new superintendent that we could work with and that I have influence with. And I went from being the outlier to where I have one of the strong voices on that board. And so we actually had another situation that could have blown up. Another situation with somebody came in from Planned Parenthood, was part of our sex ed curriculum, and they overstepped the bounds. They had guidelines, and they went way over that, and there were parents upset. Once again, I went to the superintendent and said, this is how you'd better respond. If you don't deal with this immediately, that's what happened last time. They ignored it. You've got to get in there, and these are the things I believe you need to say. And this is how you deal with this situation. Believe it or
Tim,
not, once again, he did exactly what I said. Yes, Eileen.
Tim, can you share up just the couple of those bullets you instructed your superintendent to do? Because I know we have some on the phone on the Zoom that are dealing with that right now, right at this moment. We're getting emails from them. How best to approach someone who's maybe not entirely, in your camp, but that you can approach them in a way that's logical and can produce good fruit.
Okay. Well, part of it is now. Forgive me. This will be a little crass phrase. Forgive me. Uh, I wanted to become an asset before I became a
Right.
donkey. All right. All right.
Right.
So some of that is having some wisdom in dealing that even though I'm very strong in my values, but yet being part of a team and working together and letting my voice be heard, but also working with that team and
Right.
also developing relationship.
Mhm.
Uh, sometimes it's making a phone call and saying, "How you doing today?
Yeah.
Everything going
Right.
good?" I mean, part of this is more than just uh, screaming and throwing a fit. Part of it's having some wisdom in developing the relationships. But within that, part of what I told the superintendent, if it looks like you're ignoring the community, you're going to have bigger issues. Number
Right.
one, take responsibility and say, we dropped the ball on this. All right, this was wrong, and apologize. Because
Hmm.
if you say nothing, it silence is consent. You've got to acknowledge it. Number two, say this will never happen again, and this individual will never be invited back. We are not going to
Hmm.
let him. And actually, what I got him to say, this is as far as I get, but I said, tell them that at the very least, we're going to review our contract with Planned Parenthood, and we may never have them back or let them work together with us. Now that I have to follow up with in reality, but and he said those things. I can't remember, but just those three
Right.
things. The
Right.
the parent that came in and blew up in the first comment section, and she did it very respectfully, but it was very strong. Came in at the final comment section of the meeting and thanked the superintendent, thanked him for responding, thanked him for
Mhm.
taking responsibility. And we put a fire out that
Right.
could have blown up that quick. I mean, just and so he looked at me as like, thank you. You just saved my hide kind of thing.
Right.
Some of that is it's over time developing that relationship, and just I'll just tell you this: we just had our school board president son just committed suicide about a month ago, hung himself.
Oh.
It was horrible.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay, but I'm talking about even being a Christian. I've disagreed with the school board president, but I've texted her just about every other day, praying for her. There are times
Mhm.
like she'd almost say that she was close to taking her own life. I'm
Oh.
continue, I continue to send stuff, continue, and then the school board president dealing with all of that in the school and with the staff
Right.
every day. How's it going? How can I help? What can I do?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
part of this, I guess, what I'm saying, we need to take a stand for righteousness, but we also need to represent the kingdom well. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
some of that is in these situations, part of what gives greater weight to our voice is not just our stand for righteousness, but can I say this? Loving the people that are there, looking
Yes.
for opportunities to love them, even
Right.
though we disagree with them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the challenge is Jesus said we're supposed to love our enemies. Well, let's be real. Some of these political situations are some people that we might consider enemies that we disagree with. How do we love them? And
Hmm.
so, one of the ways I think my voice has gotten stronger is loving, caring, being concerned about even those that I disagree with.
Mhm.
And it's given a greater weight and a greater strength to my voice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. That's so, so important, that message right now, especially in the climate that we all are in. Um, and we know, even personally, we don't like someone shouting in our face. What do? We back away. And we don't want people to back away. We do want to be heard. And that's really wonderful and sound advice. Um,
And
and
just if I just
yeah.
I a couple last month I challenged a situation, and I challenged it with respect. And you know what? The entire board said, "Tim, you're right," and they all voted
Mhm.
with me.
There you go. Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
thank you, Tim. We're wanting to we have to keep moving, but please, anyone with questions that you want answered, we can put them in the chat and we'll try and preserve some time at the end to take any other questions. And if we don't get them by 8 o'clock, we will email you back, whether it's Tim answering the question or Katie or Genevieve. But I'm gonna switch over now to our topic tonight that many of you were anxiously awaiting, I think, because we've had such a great response, and I'm learning as you are about the Michigan Organization of Adolescent Sexual Health. And Katie Boussard, who is the COO of Salt and Light Global, and Genevieve Marnin, who is the legislative director for Right to Life, have been in this space and actually combating MOASH for several years. So I can't think of any two people better equipped to give us a 40,000 foot view of this and help you all have knowledge and know what you're looking for in the marketplace in your school districts. So Katie and Genevieve, take it away.
Thank you for having us both. I really appreciate this. And hopefully we can enlighten you about MOASH, the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. I know the Pastor Tim mentioned Planned Parenthood and their involvement in the schools. And I'm here to tell you that MOASH is just as dangerous, if not more so, than Planned Parenthood.
I would heartily agree with that. And again, great to be with you, Catherine Boussard at Salt and Lake Global.
Oh, sorry, Genevieve. Yes.
We're gonna tag team this tonight if that's all right, and hopefully you get the best from both of us. But I don't know how many people are familiar with MOASH. It's one of those groups that often flies under the radar, but has an absolutely tremendous impact. And we'll make this PowerPoint available for you. We're gonna fly pretty quickly here and again, try to give you a high level, but if you're unfamiliar with MOASH, again, it is the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. They're a nonprofit that receives a tremendous amount of public funding. They were started in 2008 by statewide leaders from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Michigan Department of Education, and others, largely in the Granholm days. And their mission is to provide sex ed as well as youth programming, and they, quote, mobilize youth voices, engage community partners, and inform decision makers to advance sexual health, identities, and rights. And one of the things that I want to emphasize, you might hear that and say, that doesn't sound that nefarious. What's wrong with maybe sex ed or getting kids involved in decision making, giving young people a voice? Well, in their language, often words have a meaning that don't mean the same to us.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, the word identity means sexuality. And one of the biggest things to understand when you're thinking about what MOASH is doing is that they summarize the entire identity of a human being in their sexuality and how they express that. And if you're someone who believes in the Word of God and believes that man and women are created in the image of God and that there's more to what it means to be human than just your sexuality, if you think that your highest identity and ultimate calling is found in Jesus Christ and not in
Sexual
any
pleasure.
any form of pleasure or behavior or anything as minute as that, then you already have an instant clash with the philosophy that drives MOASH. And their vision, just to hit on this quickly, is that they envision a society that respects and celebrates youth identities. In other words, children engaged in sexuality, advocacy, and informed choices. And choice means everything you might think that might mean in a pro-choice world without godly values. What does MOASH actually promote? Why are we talking about this tonight? the core of MOASH is really this idea. They talk a lot about youth and our young people. And there's a couple of things, again, to kind of translate their language here. When they say our, they mean the collective, the state, society's young people, which again flies in the face of biblical values that children are a heritage from the Lord, that parents have the duty and biblical direction from no one less than God Himself to train and direct the upbringing of their children, to teach them to honor Him in their ways. And again, it's this mindset that children are the possession of the community, of the collective, and that they are young people, not children, but young people with their own autonomy, identity, and rights, without any place for parents really in that conversation. And that alone should be enough to terrify anyone of a Judeo-Christian worldview. However, they take it a step further, and they advocate for their conviction that, again, children are inherently sexual beings from birth. They actually believe that children reach their sexual peak at the age of 3 to 4 years old. If that is not perverse and sickening, makes your stomach churn, I don't know what is. They believe that children have an unfettered right to sexual expression, exploration, and experiences. And so they actually encourage children to be sexually promiscuous and active at any age. Again, they believe children are sexual from birth. Again, it's a mind bender to think in such sick and perverted terms. And because of this philosophy, they advocate for the sexual rights of children, often at the expense of parental involvement, parental rights, and of course, the well-being of children. There's tremendous harm done to children when they're sexualized too early. And the first thing that comes to mind when you start looking into this stuff is really just the words of Jesus in Matthew 18:6, that if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. And please don't confuse that with calling for violence, but there's a stern moral judgment from our Messiah to anyone who idly stands by and causes these children to be led into sin. We cannot underestimate or emphasize too strongly the truth that Christians have a duty to act and to stand in the gap and protect these children. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Genevieve.
And I'm going to just piggyback off of what Katie just said and remind everybody, many of you on here may be thinking to themselves, hey, no worries, my kids or grandkids go to private school. This is why I don't send my kids to public school. But we have a duty to protect public school children as well, because those public school children are going to grow up and they're going to be your children or grandchildren's classmates or teammates, co-workers, future spouses. And we have to influence our culture and we have to change our culture. And that starts with involving public school kids, even if your children don't go there. So I wanted to just make that point. So did we skip a point? No. Did we skip a place? No. Radical sexualization of children. So one of MOASH's major thing, and notice that they are the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. And yet, if you'll look on the screen, they have a consent toolkit that's geared for K-5. That starts in kindergarten. They believe in sexualizing children in very extraordinarily unhealthy ways that are not, where children are not mentally or emotionally ready. And when you do that, you increase the risk that those children will be victimized. If you're telling children that it's okay to be sexualized at a young age, then they are much more apt to be victims, frankly. If they are exploring sexually and think it's normal and acceptable for an adult maybe to interact with them in ways that you and I would consider very unhealthy, they are more open to being victims to pedophiles. And I want to stress that because children's innocence, it's our job to protect the innocence of children and not to lower their inhibition such that they make it normal, which is what MOASH's goal is. They want to normalize sexual behavior from kindergarten on. The other thing about these consent toolkits, and this is something that came out in the health standards when we were looking at the health education standards, One of the things that was woven into those health standards was this idea that the child is in charge of the parent. And they want to upend that parent-child relationship by giving the children agency over the parents. So this consent toolkit, which might sound really great, hey, good touch, bad catch, we don't want kids to not understand what, all that kind of thing is. But in the health standards and in this consent toolkit, they're also telling children that they can say no to their parents. If you want to put your kid in a fancy outfit for Christmas because we're going to grandma's house and the kid says, no, you don't have the right to touch me, I don't give my consent, you're giving the child agency over the parent. And that's, again, upending that familial relationship. And so there's a lot more here than just the sexualization. It's also the undermining of the family. The other thing that MOASH does consistently is they never refer to parents. They refer to supportive adults, trusted adults. It might be a parent, but in many cases, what they mean by that, I'm going to translate. You and I might look at that and go, yeah, supported adults and trusted adults. It means people who will affirm your gender or your abortion. That's what that means. And that's sprinkled throughout all of their literature.
Likewise, they also have this guide that we've put on the right-hand side, Guide to Gender Affirming Care in Michigan. They actually help facilitate children of all ages finding access to anything from cross-gender mutilation, hormones, counseling services, and much, much more. From, again, how to have an abortion to how to cut off healthy parts of your body or take drugs that will damage you for life. And again, they do that without involving parents in the conversation. And for time's sake, I'm just going to keep moving on. The next thing we'll touch on is just their real emphasis on the LGBTQ agenda and affirming programs. And one of the big conferences they have annually is called BAM, or Building a Movement for Michigan Pride. And it's an LGBTQ youth summit. It's the largest in the state, typically held at Grand Valley up in Allendale on an annual basis. This is a picture from just 1 year. By the way, this was not during the peak of COVID when they were wearing masks like that. And you can see there's all kinds of adults, young people, kind of mixed in here. And this is a multi-day conference with topics on all manner of queer things. They provide kids with clothes so they can cross-dress in whatever manner they wish, makeup, hairstyles, nail painting workshops, and then also all kinds of workshops on counseling, affirming access to care without ever notifying their parents, even how to get transportation to where they can gain those services without their parents being involved. And I think you have the next point.
Yep. And by the way, one of the main providers of cross-gender hormones is Planned Parenthood. And because Planned Parenthood is a Title X provider, Title X services allow them to provide, quote, reproductive healthcare services without parental consent. So MOASH works hand in glove with Planned Parenthood to make sure that these kids can get these cross-gendered hormones. So the other thing they have is a conference called SURGE. And this is specifically for mental health professionals committed to affirming LGBTQ youth, with an emphasis on gender expansive youth. I'm not even really sure what gender expansive youth means, but it's whatever. But the bottom line is they train mental health care professionals, counselors, school counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and they have training on how to do this. And so they have these big surge conferences, the big BAM conferences, and they are really actively pushing for the LGBTQ agenda.
They're also I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just really quick, what's so egregious also is there's now they train counselors, but the state of Michigan put a gag order on counselors.
That's point number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Literally the next point is that we actually have a law that was passed in 1996. It's MCL 330-1707, if anyone wants to look it up. Children over the age of 14, but who are still minors, are allowed to receive up to 12 visits without parental consent. And those visits could coach you on how to get an abortion. It could coach you on all manner of engaging in different sexual behavior. And it's especially used in schools with queer allies coming in under the guise of providing counseling. and counseling children in how to engage in these gender affirming therapies. And when you finish with, for example, my counseling services, I can refer you to my colleague and you can start all over with 12 visits with her and 12 visits with the next person and on without your parents ever knowing. And in 2023, there was a bill, actually two bills passed by the legislature that instituted an absolute gag order on any counselor from, even if you come in and you say, you know what, I'm really a person of faith and I was counseled to do this by someone in my school and I realized I made a huge mistake. Can you help me, restore my sexuality and gender to how God made me? If a counselor in Michigan answers biblically, they can lose their license, go to jail, and be fined a starting fine of $25,000. This law also exists in Colorado. Salt and Light Global is actually representing a case right now. We're representing legislators from 30 different states before the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a case called Chile versus Salazar, and a Christian counselor in Colorado got sued for doing exactly this, for saying, you know what, you are who God says you are. According to the word of God, you're either a man or a woman, and here's how you walk that out, with a client requesting that counseling. And the weight of government crashed down upon them. And so the Supreme Court is actually deciding whether or not laws like Michigan's gag order, Colorado's gag order are even constitutional. We feel we have a pretty strong case under the First Amendment, free expression and freedom of religion. And we're really optimistic for that news to come very soon, but stay tuned on that. But I just want you to know that's part of the landscape. And this is happening in schools all across the state.
So one of the other things that MOASH has been championing in is abortion. They love abortion. They have been working to undermine parental consent for abortion laws for as long as they've existed. They worked on Proposal 3 to try and get that passed. Again, they put out a report. They co-authored a report called In Harm's Way: How Michigan's Forced Parental Consent for Abortion Law Hurts Young People. And again, note the young people, not children, not adolescents, not minors, young people. For whatever reason, they want to incorporate all young people, and that includes K-12. They also refer to supportive adults rather than parents. I mentioned that already. They have called for the repeal for the parental consent law, and they set up a website to aid children in judicial bypasses to circumvent the current the current parental consent law. In addition to that, they have been actively working to work with legislators to repeal the law. In addition to posting this report, Will Wagner from Salt and Light Global did a response or rebuttal to the In Harm Way report, which I think is linked on here as well. So there you can look at that. You can look at the report. It's just egregious, but they do restrict. They support unrestricted, affordable abortion access for all children. So in other words, they want taxpayers to pay for children's unlimited abortions without parental consent.
Mm-hmm. And if you're wondering just how strongly MOASH advances a radical culture of death, these are just a few items from their social media. Anyone can find these. They have doulas. Traditionally, doulas have, helped with birth, kind of like a midwife, but their doulas do a few extra special things. They have abortion doulas to help children, especially taking a chemical abortion or something like that, navigate that journey. They have gender doulas that work with children, helping them transition if they're non-binary or questioning through all kinds of things. They'll even help you get surgery, change your identity legally, all kinds of things. They have disability doulas that help disabled people engage in sexual acts. They have end-of-life doulas. And if you keep in mind for a moment that the number one killer of children today is abortion, the number two killer of children today is suicide. And it is terrifying, especially when you think that in states where assisted suicide is legal. By the way, MOASH is the Michigan organization, but they actually are active in several other states. They actually have doulas to help with people navigating death and other decisions like that. There's quite a few things here, and they have active workshops breaking down barriers with coaches like the African-American lady on the kind of green slide there that will help you find ways to access abortion. And they have catchy cartoons like these geared towards children that suggest that women are not the only people who have abortions. And and talking about their bodies. And you can see the anger and hate, and again, just this absolute culture of death that is infecting children across the state.
Can
Oh,
we
yes.
back up one quick spot? Note on the bottom corner, they have menopause doulas. Now, I want to remind you that this is the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. You tell me why they need a menopause doula. I just found that very interesting.
You might also be asking, how does MOASH influence schools? And there's a variety of ways there, and I'm going to let Genevieve take the lead there.
So they, one of the things that is, so I think that's what we're really looking at is how are they injecting themselves into our schools? And one of the ways they do that is they got an exclusive contract from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to become the exclusive teen outreach program teacher trainers. So they're the teacher trainers for the pregnancy prevention program. So teen outreach program is one of a few different models that they have in Michigan to reduce teen pregnancies. And MOASH was given an exclusive contract. So any teen outreach program, any teacher that's teaching a teen outreach program in any Michigan school has been exclusively trained by MOASH staff.
They also push for radical, comprehensive sex education in schools, everything from curriculum design, advocating with the legislature or the State Board of Education. They provide policy experts, and they even have curriculum that your local public school is possibly using.
They have the Youth Advisory Councils, or a YAC. And they are in, like, there's a map on here where all the counties where they have YACs, Youth Advisory Councils. They pay children to be part of their YACs. They paid $86,904 out in bribes, enticements, gifts for children to participate in any one of their number of organizational things that they have. But the thing about a youth advisory council is they train these children to go into the schools and become walking billboards for their services. So maybe they can't go in the school and say, hey, you know what, if you need an abortion, you can go to the MOASH website or the judicial bypass or whatever. Or if you want to get cross-gender hormones, they can help you out. So they train the youth to go into the schools and be their hands and feet.
And they're also very active on sex ed advisory boards. You can see a picture in the left of actually MOASH students and advocates at the State Board of Education with the acting superintendent at the time, Dr. Sue Carnell. They are also often student advisors to the sex ed advisory boards. MOASH has training specifically for sex ed advisory boards. And they also have training, and this one, kind of made the rounds on social media, but as a school board member, I received this the day it was sent out. A partnership between MOASH and the MDE, 6 pages of trainings all throughout the spring, again, affirming queer sex ed and other similar services. And these documents are all linked. You can click on them and find more. We'll send that PowerPoint out later.
So how is MOASH funded? They make buku money. They got, between federal and state grants, $2.366 million last year. $2.366 million in state and federal grants. They also get grants and private donations. In fact, the Open Society Foundation, aka George Soros, donated money to them. They get Title X money, which is pass-through family planning dollars, and they get PrEP money. So I made a little chart on the far right side. PrEP is the Personal Responsibility Education Program, which is from the federal government, that is designed to give money to the states to reduce teen pregnancies. So the PrEP money comes into the state and it goes to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And from there, they divvy up that money into what they call TPIP grants, or Taking Pride in Prevention grants. And they got $3.4 million just in the TPIP grants last year. The job of this is to educate adolescents on both abstinence and contraception to prevent pregnancy and STIs. Now, how many, show of hands, do you think MOASH is actually promoting abstinence? My guess is not. They became the exclusive trainers for the TOP program, like I mentioned, and then their county boards approve these grants, and then they get implemented in our schools. And as many of you recall, during COVID, we expanded school health clinics because, oh my gosh, mental health issues and that, people are sick and COVID, blah, blah, blah. Well, they often work hand in hand with these TPIP programs and all these teen pregnancy prevention programs, work hand in hand with the school nurses to have, quote, warm referrals for reproductive health care. So this becomes this kind of symbiotic relationship between the school health clinic and the sex ed trainers. Anyway, so I could go on and on, but you get the gist that they got a lot of money and it comes from a lot of different sources.
And for the interest of time, we're going to move pretty quickly here, but MOASH is very active in your local community. If you ever see their logo with that mitten on a sticker, on a poster in your school, beware. They really work to lure kids as young as 13 to participate in their training programs. Some of them, like Project Glimmer, pay each child a $500 stipend to attend or participate. And they also have their Youth Racial Equity Council. Is it okay if I move pretty quickly through these?
I just want to point out that the reason why we're putting these in here is because you might be looking for MOASH, but this one says MyRec. They have all these different names, Project Glimmer, MyRec, all these different names. So we just keep in mind that they wear many hats.
Another hat is called My Voice. This is particularly their advocacy arm. And again, this starts with very young children. These boys are just in middle school, 12, 13 years old. The one in the spotted shirt actually has earrings on that say gender is a construct. They take these students down to the Capitol. They get them lobbying with legislators, pushing things like the comprehensive sex ed that we were able, by the grace of God, to defeat in 2024, pushing for things like the radical standards that we just saw. And
they actually testified to repeal the abortion law that we had on the books forever.
And another name that they operate under is MyCASH, the Michigan Coalition of Adolescent Sexual Health. And you can read about these. You can see these are honestly massive organizational things. And there's so many other programs they have, SASH clubs, GSA's Gay Straight Alliance clubs, their LIFT program, and they have a host of Train the Trainer programs. And again, if you ever see a poster with this little logo that you see on the right-hand side, that is MOASH in your district. If you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. And as we wind down, I just want to leave you with a little bit of hope, because there's tremendous evil, but we're called in scripture in Romans 12:21, not to be overcome by evil, but to overcome evil with good. And there's many things that you can do. We challenge you, like Pastor Cross said, to engage at your local school board, attend meetings, consider running for the school board, apply to be on the sex ed advisory board, get to know your board members, build relationships, have conversations. And also, while you're doing all that, look for those stickers, find out how and where MOASH is active in your district. Also do the same thing with your county commission and your city councils. Attend the meetings, look for grants like Genevieve talked about that are specifically funding MOASH sponsored activities in your community, because chances are your county commissioners and city councilmen have no idea what they're actually voting to fund.
Right. And then, of course, you can always contact your state legislators. You guys probably didn't know a lot of what we just told you. Most people wouldn't, and neither do your state legislators. As much as they're connected in Lansing, they really don't know this information. So anytime you can bring this to their attention and ask them to adopt policies that prohibit MDHHS or any state agencies or departments from giving grants or contracts or any public funds to organizations. Now, you can't name them by name probably, but if you say, we don't want money going to organizations that promote cross-gender services for children or that undermine the natural fundamental rights of parents to direct and control the care and upbringing of their children as it pertains to sexual health and mental health. That creates a bigger umbrella, and it would absolutely encompass these guys.
And I also encourage you to contact your federal legislators. I've been working with congressmen to help defund MOASH, because that figure we gave you, 2.366 million, that was last year under the Trump administration that MOASH received that much federal funding. And that's just the Michigan number. They're active in other states too. And if legislators start hearing from all of you, we can really move the needle on this.
And then, of course, keep this all in mind when you go to the polls to vote. We have the state board of education has 2 open seats. We have Supreme Court decision. We have judges who grant judicial bypasses. We have candidates for every office up and down the entire ballot. So personnel is policy. If Gretchen Whitmer, our radical pro-abortion, LGBTQ supporting governor, were not at the helm, she's the one that appointed the MDHHS leader who gives these grants out. So keep that in mind. There's all this downstream effect depending on who we vote for. And then lastly, tell 2 or more friends and get them to join you. So share this knowledge with people because they don't know, and then get them to come to the school boards or wherever else with you.
Wow. You gave us a lot of great information. Thank you. We will be doing a follow-up email to everybody who registered. And if we have your permission, we're happy to share your slides if people want to review them. Katie and Genevieve, you put such a ton of work in that. We did see a couple questions just to clarify on the funding part, and I think you said it, Katie. It was 2025 funding. And I think it truly is a lack of understanding where this funding is going to on every single level of government, it sounds like, right? So it's going to take all of us to start bringing awareness, it sounds like, to our federal legislators, our counties, our counties
Well,
and our state.
This
Yeah.
came out of the Calhoun County Commission because
Yeah.
they approved a grant. The Calhoun County Health Department came to the county commission and asked them to approve this TPIP grant to prevent teen pregnancies. And of course, the county commission's like, that's a good idea. We should do that. But they had no idea which curriculum, which is going to be the teen outrage curriculum, and that MOASH was the exclusive
Right.
trainers for that. They don't know this.
Yeah, and there's so many different names, like you said. It's not just one name, which is very clever on their part. I get it. And I think someone asked, does the federal HHS been contacted in regards to MOASH? And I think that has been happening. Katie, am I correct on that?
We are working to shine a light on this, and we have not only handed this, we've handed much of this information already over to the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, and the Department of Health and Human Services. They are so backlogged, but again, hearing from all of you will help move the needle on that. And then again, we've been meeting with legislators because they control the purse strings. And if we can get it out of the budget, we can stop it there.
And I will point out that the Administration for Children and Family, which is one of the Trump administrations, did send a letter to Dana Nessel and our administration telling them to cease and desist using some of these materials that were all about the gender stuff. And then AG Nessel filed a lawsuit to block the enforcement of that. And unfortunately, an Oregon judge did place an injunction against the administration, and therefore these objectionable materials are still being used.
Well, I mean, we all have to ring the bell every way, the legal way, the political way, do it with, I think you can do it without screaming. You don't want to scream, but we absolutely have to ring the bell in every level of government. And along with the legal options, the political options, as you all heard, many of those bills regarding the counselors, the gag orders, that was when we did not have a majority, and those who were counter to our values had all the power, and they were ready to run, and they did. So majorities matter, and I think you all know that, or you wouldn't be on this call. But we can make a difference. We have another opportunity this year, to get engaged. And I just want to, I think, good, Katie's putting some links in the chat. And we're getting close, but I wanted to remind everyone, there are folks here. Thank you. We've gotten your emails about your talking to your boards, and I saw Monica was talking about the Chippewa Valley District Board, and I know the Taylor School Board is they're being very active down there. I know Moms for Liberty has been very active in the Taylor School District. They couldn't make it. They're in a meeting tonight. but we'll be able to talk to her later. So your voices are being heard, and I know it's painstaking, but we do urge you. We're going to send a link in our email that also asks you to complete 5 questions, and it's kind of a reminder to you. But we feel like if we start to build almost an audit of who's in what school district, and if you are in one public school district, are you asking them, do you offer sex ed? If you do you have a sex education advisory board? If it's yes, who's on it? And is the majority parents and clergy? And then the next question is, well, how are they appointed? How would I get on? Or how would my friend get on?
You
And
can go to
then,
MOASH's website. They have an application to get on an SEB board.
ah,
They do.
yeah.
Oh,
And then the last thing is, make sure you find out when they're going to be talking about the curriculum for next year, because many of the things that were the guidelines, standards passed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, will really actually nothing will be seen until the next school year. I don't think many school boards have even reviewed the 71-page document, maybe. I don't know. But those will be coming up as they review their curriculum for next year. So we have time now to continue to build and talk to your friends and your friend groups about going and take turns, sit in your school board meetings, because no one person, can do it all.
And by the
But
way, going there personally is hugely important because they are very covetous and they will not necessarily give you the minutes. Even though you can FOIA them, they will sometimes make it very difficult for you to get the minutes, and they're not necessarily broadcast on Zoom. So you need to physically go there and take notes and maybe even record it.
mhm.
And on that's a great point, Genevieve. And just so you know, at the state level, the state budgets are being worked out right as we speak. I know I've been in touch with the representative on the appropriations subcommittee on education to look for what funding are going into these different groups. And I know Katie has been also. We're trying to really bring awareness with the legislators on these as they are looking at budgets for next year. So that is happening like right now. They have to come up with a budget for the state. Well, I mean, I think their goal is to come up with it by the end of June. We've seen that happen, go down to the wire at the end of September. But I think this year they'll probably get the budget settled by the end of June, and we'll keep you posted on how that's going as well. And I think I'm running up to 8 o'clock. Any other points you want to make, you guys?
I just want to make sure if we had any questions that didn't get answered. I think Katie was busy answering them in the chat. So,
And our emails are on the first slide of that PowerPoint. Feel free to reach out anytime if we can help you in any way.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Go ahead. I was just going to say, we'll have a follow-up email with links to documents and handouts, and we'll point people, if that's okay with Katie and Jen, we can include their emails as well for easy access.
And Pastor Tim, if you're still here, would you mind praying us off the call?
Okay. All right. Father, we
Thank
thank you that you've brought us into the kingdom for such a time as this. You chose us for this day and this hour. And Father, I believe that you've graced us to make a difference in this hour and be part of the army of God in this hour. Father, I pray for each person here that you would instruct them, you would reveal to them how they can get involved and how they can make a difference. So, Father, we thank you for this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Our next one will be March 10th. And if you want to make a difference for this, we have over 9 million people in our state. And so there are a boatload of people that care about everything that we're talking about. So as we do a follow-up email to you and share connections to our friends Genevieve and Katie and Pastor Tim, please forward that email on and let people know that there is good news happening, growing. There's an opportunity for more and more people to get access to truth and better understanding. Our desire is to serve one another and is to go about as statesmen. We're not rabble rousers. We are here to do good and to be good representatives of our Heavenly Father here on earth. So please share the information, include people in your emails, invite them to go to board meetings with you. Don't forget to just to rally your fellow churchgoers, to be praying for your local school districts. But like Pastor Tim was so eloquently saying in the chat, we're all prayer warriors, but the Bible says that prayer without faith without action is dead. So our challenge to all of you is to walk in action. And with that, Genevieve,
Can I just real quick put
Absolutely.
a little plug in? Right to Life of Michigan's Legislative Day with they come have lunch with your legislators is on March 18th, and our keynote speaker is William Wagner, who will be speaking about
gosh, how
parental authority and parental rights. So if you're interested, you can go to rtl.org and there's an event page. You can sign up if you want to, register to come.
Awesome.
Just
I'll
wanted to
make
throw
sure to get that in the follow-up email too. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Blessings to
Right.
all. We will see you on March 10th. We hope you can join us again. Thank you. And
Thank
have a
you,
good
everyone.
evening.